Good morning. I'm honored to invite you to follow the second Road to ShadeMed online event, which is the preparation pattern that we led to the ShadeMed conference to be held in early autumn. The topic of this webinar is the new geopolitical challenges in an evolving Mediterranean, and it is organized in collaboration with the La Sapienza University of Rome and the Mediterranean Foundation for Strategic Studies of Toulon. Mare Nostrum's political scenarios and geopolitical challenges and trends will be discussed by economics, academics, international researchers, and analysts, as well as journalists. The event will be available on our social media accounts. Enjoy and comment. Your contribution of thought will certainly be useful and will allow us to better develop our communication and operational activities. The Share Awareness and Deconfliction in Mediterranean Sea Conference is a part of the EU commitment to effectively address the debate on the security in the Mediterranean. It is an open forum where everybody can express opinions in a frank and constructive manner to demonstrate that the freedom of expression and dialogue are fundamental values of the entire EU community. Irini, through the ShadeMed conference and Road to ShadeMed, has the ambition to provide a proactive contribution to the discussion about the issues related to the Mediterranean arena. The Mediterranean is a fulcrum between three continents, each one with its own peculiarities. It is a wide meeting point for different cultures, beliefs, and societies. It is a fact that a great number of world crises originated in the Mediterranean basin. UNAFOR-Med is operating right at the heart of the Mediterranean Sea, with the main task to ensure the respect of United Nations arms embargo regarding Libya. Irini is a part of a process involving political, military, economic, and humanitarian tracks agreed at the Berlin Conference in early 2020. We work day by day to guarantee stability and security in the central Mediterranean, remaining equidistant from all the involved parties. Our future is written on this sea. It is our job to be effective, impartial, proactive, and vigilant for the sake of wellness of this area.
Irini est une mission européenne qui a été initiée le 31 mars 2020. Et donc cette mission consiste à faire respecter l'embargo des Nations Unies sur les armes à destination de la Libye et également sur les exportations illicites de pétrole depuis la Libye.
We are an Overland frigate deployed in an UNAFOR-Med Operation Irini. So without imposing any kind of delay in your passage, I would like to know if you agree to embark 6 of my officers on your vessel to have a short conversation and exchange information. Over.
Le Premier Clair est un bâtiment d'une centaine de marins donc, qui opère actuellement dans le cadre de la mission Irini, donc qui met en œuvre l'embargo des Nations Unies sur les armes à destination de la Libye. Pour mener à bien cette mission, le Premier Clair a été renforcé par une équipe de défense et d'intervention maritime composée de 7 fusiliers marins.
Okay. Thank you very much. Relationship between every seaman.
Today, I would like to express my deepest regards to HSIGL, whose task has come to an end after more than 80 days of deployment in UNAFOR-Med Operation Irini, most of them spent as the flagship of the task force. Since the first moment we met during the handover and takeover procedures of flagship to ITS San Giorgio, your support has been crucial and highly important for the successful commencement of our staff and the whole Naval Forces work. Your commitment and contribution throughout the first days of my command was great. I want to prize on your outstanding overall performance and express my utmost satisfaction of you proving to be at all times a reliable underway asset, demonstrating the right abnegation and dedication to the European common values. I send you all my best wishes of fair winds and following seas for the future. Bravo Zulu, HSIGN.
L'attività di Freight Approach consiste nell'effettuare una visita di cortesia a bordo di unità mercantili che transitano nell'area di operazione al fine di effettuare lo scambio di informazioni. L'attività di boarding consiste invece nell'effettuare un'ispezione approfondita a bordo di unità sospette in transito nell'area di operazione. In questo caso si effettua l'inserzione di un team di 8 operatori per mettere in sicurezza l'unità e favorire l'inserzione del team ispettivo.
Ora le unità navali in area Corsini e l'unità francese Verre effettueranno un'attività
Good morning. I'm honored to invite you to follow the second Road to Shade Med online event, which is the preparation pattern that we led to the Shade Med conference to be held in early autumn. The topic of this webinar is the new geopolitical challenges in an evolving Mediterranean, and it is organized in collaboration with the La Sapienza University of Rome and the Mediterranean Foundation for Strategic Studies of Toulon. Mare Nostrum's political scenarios and geopolitical challenges and trends will be discussed by economics, academics, international researchers, and analysts, as well as journalists. The event will be available on our social media accounts. Enjoy and comment. Your contribution of thought will certainly be useful and will allow us to better develop our communication and operational activities. The Share Awareness and Deconfliction in Mediterranean Sea Conference is a part of the EU commitment to effectively address the debate on the security in the Mediterranean. It is an open forum where everybody can express opinions in a frank and constructive manner to demonstrate that the freedom of expression and dialogue are fundamental values of the entire EU community. IRINI, through the Shade Med conference and Road to Shade Med, has the ambition to provide a proactive contribution to the discussion about the issues related to the Mediterranean arena. The Mediterranean is a fulcrum between 3 continents, each one with its own peculiarities. It is a wide meeting point for different cultures, beliefs, and societies. It is a fact that a great number of world crises originated in the Mediterranean basin. UNAFOR-Med is operating right at the heart of the Mediterranean Sea, with the main task to ensure the respect of United Nations arms embargo regarding Libya. IRINI is a part of a process involving political, military, economic, and humanitarian tracks agreed at the Berlin Conference in early 2020. We work day by day to guarantee stability and security in the central Mediterranean, remaining equidistant from all the involved parties. Our future is written on this sea. It is our job to be effective, impartial, proactive, and vigilant for the sake of wellness of this area.
IRINI est une mission européenne qui a été initiée le 31 mars 2020. Et donc cette mission consiste à faire respecter l'embargo des Nations Unies sur les armes à destination de la Libye et également sur les exportations illicites de pétrole depuis la Libye.
We are an Untitled frigate deployed in an unformed operation IRINI. So without imposing any kind of delay in your passage, I would like to know if you agree to embark 6 of my officers on your vessel to have a short conversation and exchange information. Over.
Le Private Lair est un bâtiment d'une centaine de marins qui opère actuellement dans le cadre de la mission Irini, donc qui met en œuvre l'embargo des Nations Unies sur les armes à destination de la Libye. Pour mener à bien cette mission, le Private Lair a été renforcé par une équipe de défense et d'intervention maritime composée de 7 fusiliers marins.
Thank you very much. Relationship between every seaman.
Today, I would like to express my deepest regards to HSIGR. WAS task has come to an end after more than 80 days of deployment in UNAFOR Med Operation Irini, most of them spent as the flagship of the task force. Since the first moment we met during the handover and takeover procedures of flagship IDS San Giorgio, your support has been crucial and highly important for the successful commencement of our staff and the whole Naval Forces work. Your commitment and contribution throughout the first days of my command was great. I want to prize on your outstanding overall performance and express my utmost satisfaction of you proving to be at all times a reliable underway asset, demonstrating the right abnegation and dedication to the European common values. I send you all my best wishes of fair winds and following seas for the future. Bravo Zulu, HSIGN.
L'attività di Freight Approach consiste nell'effettuare una visita di cortesia a bordo di unità mercantili che transitano nell'area di operazione al fine di effettuare lo scambio di informazioni. L'attività di boarding consiste invece nell'effettuare un'ispezione approfondita a bordo di unità sospette in transito nell'area di operazione. In questo caso si effettua l'inserzione di un team di 8 operatori per mettere in sicurezza l'unità e favorire l'inserzione del team ispettivo.
Ora le unità navali, nave Bossini e l'unità francese Verre effettueranno un'attività
Good morning. I'm honored to invite you to follow the second Road to Shade Med online event, which is the preparation pattern that we led to the Shade Med conference to be held in early autumn. The topic of this webinar is the new geopolitical challenges in an evolving Mediterranean, and it is organized in collaboration with the La Sapienza University of Rome and the Mediterranean Foundation for Strategic Studies of Toulon. Mare Nostrum's political scenarios and geopolitical challenges and trends will be discussed by economics, academics, international researchers, and analysts, as well as journalists. The event will be available on our social media accounts. Enjoy and comment. Your contribution of thought will certainly be useful and will allow us to better develop our communication and operational activities. The Share Awareness and Deconfliction in Mediterranean Sea Conference is a part of the EU commitment to effectively address the debate on the security in the Mediterranean. It is an open forum where everybody can express opinions in a frank and constructive manner to demonstrate that the freedom of expression and dialogue are fundamental values of the entire EU community. Irini, through the Shade Med conference and Road to Shade Med, has the ambition to provide a proactive contribution to the discussion about the issues related to the Mediterranean arena. The Mediterranean is a fulcrum between 3 continents, each one with its own peculiarities. It is a wide meeting point for different cultures, beliefs, and societies. It is a fact that a great number of world crises originated in the Mediterranean basin. UNAFOR-Med is operating right at the heart of the Mediterranean Sea, with the main task to ensure the respect of United Nations arms embargo regarding Libya. IRINI is a part of a process involving political, military, economic, and humanitarian tracks agreed at the Berlin Conference in early 2020. We work day by day to guarantee stability and security in the Central Mediterranean, remaining equidistant from all the involved parties. Our future is written on this sea. It is our job to be effective, impartial, proactive, and vigilant for the sake of wellness of this area.
Irini est une mission européenne qui a été initiée le 31 mars 2020. Et donc cette mission consiste à faire respecter l'embargo des Nations Unies sur les armes à destination de la Libye et également sur les exportations illicites de pétrole depuis la Libye.
We are an overrun frigate deployed in an NAVFOR-Med Operation Irini. So without imposing any kind of delay in your passage, I would like to know if you agree to embark 6 of my officers on your vessel to have a short conversation and exchange information. Over.
Le premier Hitler est un bâtiment d'une centaine de marins qui opère actuellement dans le cadre de la mission Irini, donc qui met en œuvre l'embargo des Nations Unies sur les armes à destination de la Libye. Pour mener à bien cette mission, le premier Hitler a été renforcé par une équipe de défense et d'intervention maritime composée de 7 fusiliers marins.
Thank you very much. Relationship between every FCC
Today, I would like to express my deepest regards to HSIGR, whose task has come to an end after more than 80 days of deployment in UNAFOR-Med Operation Irini, most of them spent as the flagship of the task force. Since the first moment we met during the handover and takeover procedures of flagship to ITS San Giorgio, your support has been crucial and highly important for the successful commencement of our staff and the whole Naval Forces work. Your commitment and contribution throughout the first days of my command was great. I want to prize on your outstanding overall performance and express my utmost satisfaction of you proving to be at all times a reliable underway asset, demonstrating the right abnegation and dedication to the European common values. I send you all my best wishes of fair winds and following seas for the future. Bravo Zulu, HSIGN.
L'attività di Freight Approach consiste nell'effettuare una visita di cortesia a bordo di unità mercantili che transitano nell'area di operazione al fine di effettuare lo scambio di informazioni. L'attività di boarding consiste invece nell'effettuare un'ispezione approfondita a bordo di unità sospette in transito nell'area di operazione. In questo caso si effettua l'inserzione di un team di 8 operatori per mettere in sicurezza l'unità e favorire l'inserzione del team ispettivo.
Ora le unità navali in area Repositioning l'unità francese Libya effettueranno un'attività
Good morning. I'm honored to invite you to follow the second Road to Shade Med online event, which is the preparation pattern that we led to the Shade Med conference to be held in early autumn. The topic of this webinar is the new geopolitical challenges in an evolving Mediterranean, and it is organized in collaboration with the La Sapienza University of Rome and the Mediterranean Foundation for Strategic Studies of Toulon. Mare Nostrum's political scenarios and geopolitical challenges and trends will be discussed by economics, academics, international researchers, and analysts, as well as journalists. The event will be available on our social media accounts. Enjoy and comment. Your contribution of thought will certainly be useful and will allow us to better develop our communication and operational activities. The Shared Awareness and Deconfliction in Mediterranean Sea Conference is a part of the EU commitment to effectively address the debate on the security in the Mediterranean. It is an open forum where everybody can express opinions in a frank and constructive manner to demonstrate that the freedom of expression and dialogue are fundamental values of the entire EU community. IRINI, through the ShadeMed conference and Road to ShadeMed, has the ambition to provide a proactive contribution to the discussion about the issues related to the Mediterranean arena. The Mediterranean is a fulcrum between three continents, each one with its own peculiarities. It is a wide meeting point for different cultures, beliefs, and societies. It is a fact that a great number of world crises originated in the Mediterranean basin. UNAFOR-Med is operating right at the heart of the Mediterranean Sea, with the main task to ensure the respect of the United Nations arms embargo regarding Libya. IRINI is a part of a process involving political, military, economic, and humanitarian tracks agreed at the Berlin Conference in early 2020. We work day by day to guarantee stability and security in the Central Mediterranean, remaining equidistant from all the involved parties. Our future is written on this sea. It is our job to be effective, impartial, proactive, and vigilant for the sake of wellness of this area.
IRINI est une mission européenne qui a été initiée le 31 mars 2020. Et donc cette mission consiste à faire respecter l'embargo des Nations Unies sur les armes à destination de la Libye et également sur les exportations illicites de pétrole depuis la Libye.
We are an Untitled frigate deployed in an Unifying operation IRINI. So without imposing any kind of delay in your passage, I would like to know if you agree to embark 6 of my officers on your vessel to have a short conversation and exchange information. Over.
Le Premier Clair est un bâtiment d'une centaine de marins qui opère actuellement dans le cadre de la mission IRINI, donc qui met en œuvre l'embargo des Nations Unies sur les armes à destination de la Libye. Pour mener à bien cette mission, le Premier Clair a été renforcé par une équipe de défense et d'intervention maritime composée de 7 fusiliers marins.
Thank you very much. Relationship between every seaman.
Today, I would like to express my deepest regards to HS Aegean, whose task has come to an end after more than 80 days of deployment in UNAFOR-Med Operation IRINI, most of them spent as the flagship of the task force. Since the first moment we met during the handover and takeover procedures of flagship to IDS San Giorgio, your support has been crucial and highly important for the successful commencement of our staff and the whole Naval Forces work. Your commitment and contribution throughout the first days of my command was great. I want to prize on your outstanding overall performance and express my utmost satisfaction of you proving to be at all times a reliable underway asset, demonstrating the right abnegation and dedication to the European common value.
Pronto?
Sì.
Pronto?
Siamo...
Mi dite?
Ok, puoi iniziare.
Ok, vado. Good afternoon. Sorry for the delay due to technical problem. I'm Rear Admiral Fabio Agostini, Operation Commander of Operation Unifying Irini. First of all, thanks to all those that are following this event on our social media accounts. Of course, thanks to our speaker that I will introduce soon as well, and to all those that are following inside the OHQ. Following the first successful conference organized at COE today we are here for the second Road to Shade Med online event, which is the preparation pattern made of various events that will lead to the Shade Med conference to be held in early autumn. The Shade Med, Share Awareness and Deconfliction in Mediterranean Sea, is a part of the EU's commitment to effectively address the debate on security in the Mediterranean Sea. It is an open forum where everybody can express opinion in a frank and constructive manner to demonstrate that freedom of expression and dialogue are fundamental values of the entire EU community. Irini, through the Shade Med conference Road to Shade Med, has the ambition to provide a proactive contribution to the discussion about the issue related to the Mediterranean arena. Further information about all events that we are going to organize could be found on our website. The topic of today's webinar is the new geopolitical challenges in an evolving Mediterranean, and it is organized in collaboration with the La Sapienza University of Rome and the Mediterranean Foundation from Strategic Studies of Toulon. The webinar will analyze the new political scenarios and the new geopolitical challenges and trends. About this, let me underline that the Mediterranean basin represents a fundamental global crossroad in the world. It is a fulcrum between three continents, each one with its own peculiarities. It is a wide meeting point for different culture, beliefs, and society. We are talking about an area with a very complex web of interrelation and a very high rate of economic and cultural exchange among historical and new players. It is a space where we are witnessing humanitarian crisis and migration flow, challenges to the shipping community, as well as rethinking of energy choice. The stability of the area is an essential element for the global security. It is a fact that a great number of the world crises originate in the Mediterranean basin, the spread of Daesh, for example, Libyan instability, the Syrian war, tension in Lebanon, terrorist fighters, militias, and contractors, but also the migration crisis and regional contentions. The basin provides then multiple strategic challenges significantly aggravated by the ongoing pandemic. UNAFOR Med Irini is operating right in the heart of the Mediterranean Sea with the main task to ensure the respect of United Nations arms embargo regarding Libya, but also to stem the illegal flow of oil smuggling, human trafficking, and train the Libyan Coast Guard and Navy. Irini is a part of a process involving political, military, economic, and humanitarian tracks agreed at the Berlin Conference in early 2020. This represents the European Union's truly holistic approach to the solution of the long-lasting conflict in Libya. We work day by day to guarantee stability and security in the Central Mediterranean, remaining equidistant from all the involved parties. Our future of Europe, is written in the Mediterranean Sea. It is our job, the job of UNAFOR Med Irini, to be effective, impartial, proactive, and vigilant for the common welfare. In conclusion, I hope you will enjoy the incoming events, and I wish you a fruitful and enriching exchange during the webinar. I would like to invite those that are following us on the social media accounts to comment the various thoughts shared by the speakers. Your contribution will certainly be useful and will allow us to better develop our communication and operation activities. So let me now introduce our moderator, that is a well-known journalist, Alessia Ardesi, an experienced journalist and an expert of international relations that today will moderate this webinar. Alessia, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Good afternoon to everybody. Good afternoon, Admiral, Rear Admiral. I want to thank you for being connected with us for this webinar this afternoon. And so, Rear Admiral Agostini and distinguished guests and speakers, Alessia Mercangi, Tarek Megerisi, Pascal Osseur. It's for me a great honor and a rare privilege to introduce and moderate this webinar tonight, this afternoon together. And it is dedicated to the new geopolitical challenges in an evolving Mediterranean. In particular, Admiral, let me express my gratitude to you and to all who make Unifying Irini possible. You are together carrying on with not only the countless operational tasks and incumbencies of such a delicate and relevant mission, but also with excellent communication initiatives, such as this one is today. Let me also mention that today's webinar is one of a series of online events which will pave the way toward ShadeMed, the October Global Conference and annual event. And this is only the second webinar that will bring us to that event. ShadeMed is designed to set the pace for all relevant issues concerning the Mediterranean environment, economy, security, policies, and dialogue. And those will development affect and shape our common future. So I don't know if your Admiral have you already spoken about your introduction. So if you, because I wasn't connected before. So if it was, I let you the stare.
Alessia, thank you very much for your kind words. You can go ahead with the first speaker. So I delivered my previous my speech previously. It was a very brief introduction. So the floor is yours. Thank you.
Yes, sorry. Okay, thank you very much. So can you see me? Okay. Let me add that the changes and the fractures that have occurred in the MENA area brought the Mediterranean back at the center of the attention of global and regional powers. Today, our webinar will analyze the new political scenarios and the new geopolitical challenges and trends. So, you have already presented all our distinguished guests, isn't it right?
Well, please, can you briefly introduce them?
Okay,
one by
so
one.
We start from Alessia Mercangi. It's a pleasure to have you here. And Alessia Mercangi, good afternoon. She is an Associate Research Fellow at the Middle East and North Africa Center at ISPI, Tenure Track Assistant Professor of Contemporary History of North Africa and the Middle East at the Department of Social Sciences and Economics, Sapienza University of Rome, and a non-resident Senior Fellow for the North Africa and Middle East Program at the Atlantic Council. You are also a faculty member of the Master in Migration and Development, La Sapienza University of Rome. So, welcome back. And I start with my first question for you. During the last several decades, the Mediterranean has been facing long-term transformation, regaining an unexpected scenario. What have been the most significant changes in your perspective?
Thank you, Dr. Ardesi, for this question. First of all, I would like to thank you, for the Iranian operation, and in particular, Rear Admiral Fabio Agostini, for inviting me to this event. It is an honor for me to participate to such an important meeting. As Dr. Ardesi said, the perception of the Mediterranean as a political space has undergone a deep transformation in recent decades, founding a new centrality in the international scenario. Researchers are no longer living in the comfortable bipolar world, where most of the analyses were essentially part of a dichotomous narrative based on binary vision and generally characterized by a cognitive matrix connected to the zero-sum game theory based on the amicus hostis mechanism. Within that vision, the Mediterranean basin was basically perceived as the southern flank of the Atlantic Alliance, a well-defined and basically easily identifiable geographically space where NATO had a dominant role. The polarizing opposition of the Cold War created some special condition for preserving Mediterranean unity, thinking the recent historical changes are closely interconnected with global trend and often external to regional dynamics. Indeed, the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991 and the passage to the post-bipolar phase deeply affected the strategic and political perception of the region. In particular, in the post-bipolar phase, the Mediterranean has ceased to be considered like a sort of defensive barrier or a bridge for the West to become again challengeable. And this in particular due also to the perceived decline of US power, or at least of its interests, of course, and the current redistribution of power at a global level, which had far bolder initiatives by regional and external actors. From a geopolitical perspective, this return to strategic centrality is connected with a marked economic decline of the basin in favor of the Asia-Pacific region, and above all, with an increase in its conflict, war, riots, internal clashes within the Islamic world, migrations, and the Chinese attempt to connect this sea to its Belt and Road initiative. In this period, it became evident that the Mediterranean basin had to deal both with traditionally hard security challenges and with soft security ones, connected with political instability, economic insecurity, illicit trafficking, aggressive migration trend, religious and identity-related tension. In other words, the regional political and security scenario was characterized by a plurality of heterogeneous problems which could not be addressed with the old metrics of the Cold War. What is the result? The result is that the region appears today to be more divided and fragmented than ever before, with a multitude of flashpoints and geopolitical shortcuts that threaten the architecture of the state and favor the disintegration of the post-colonial political order. In the last decade, we are witnessing a dangerous rise of the political divide and identity conflict between the two shores of a basin that has become perceived as a barricade. It is evident that the growth of populist and anti-migrant movement in the northern part and the progressive decline of the past Euro-Mediterranean programs has been caused by this phenomenon. What arises the perception of the Mediterranean basin as a barrier. And paradoxically, however, states on the two shores risk being left on the edge and in partially lost their historical relationship with their sea, which is being transformed into a global sea, despite its geography. A world dimension that risks to marginalize the Euro-Mediterranean dimension to favor a global but more fragmented reality, where regional single-state actors interact with non-state ones, proxies, and external powers without any effective multilateral framework.
Thank you, Dr. Alessia, and for your insight on this important question. And let me introduce another guest, Dr. Tarek Megerisi. Good afternoon.
Hi, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Well, I should say I'm no doctor yet. I'm not as distinguished as the other guests here.
Yes. Okay. And no, you are the same distinguished guest as the other one. And I want to introduce you because you are a policy fellow with the North African Middle East program at the European Council on Foreign Relations. You are a political analyst and researcher who specializes in Libyan affairs and more generally politics, governance, and development in the Arab world. So, can I start with my first question for you? In the Libyan crisis has represented one of the main drivers of instability in the Mediterranean due to the civil war that destroyed the country, the presence of jihadist groups linked with Daesh, and the continuous meddling of external actors which transformed the conflict into a proxy war. What is your assessment of the current situation on the ground from a strategic point of view, and how the main internal and external actors are repositioning there?
Thank you so much, firstly, for this very engaging question, and thank you to UNAVFOR Med and Admiral Agostini for inviting me here today. I mean, it's a big question, but from a strategic point of view, Libya's path or its trajectory, it seems to be almost circular. It's almost like that with the experiences of the new government, we're only actually repeating the same mistakes and the dynamics that happened with the former government, the government of national accord of Fayez al-Sarraj. And that's something that I really say with quite a heavy heart, because there were such high hopes for the UN process or for Libya's stability more generally after the war ended last year. But judging by events since the appointment of this new government of national unity, Libya's global civil war, it never really ended. It's continuing. The countries involved and their Libyan proxies are just kind of changing how they fight, and they're maneuvering in preparation for a new opportunity. And as I said, this is all very similar to the last experience of the last government that was created by the last UN process. And you know, as we can see, when the gaze of the world is upon the process, everything goes quite smoothly. It's only really afterwards where the problems start. And just like in 2015, now we have the Speaker of the Parliament, Agila Saleh, and this renegade General Haftar, who you all might know as the person who attacked Tripoli in 2019, who destroyed an older UN process, only to be comprehensively defeated. Well, these two are again trying to set up a proto-state in the east of Libya, claiming to represent the region, despite having limited to no political legitimacy there, given that Agila Saleh, he lost the internal elections of the UN process. But nevertheless, between these two, they are managing their own government officials, their own armed forces, which is now largely made up of foreign mercenaries rather than Libyans, and even their own corruption rackets. And they even have their set of international relations, you know, as they are supported in doing this by countries like Egypt and the United Arab Emirates, and even some Europeans too, like France and now Greece. And although the kind of excuse du jour that they use is that, you know, these countries are trying to do this to protect their interests against Turkey or to leverage Turkey, I mean, really, they just kind of want to put their guy in charge, right? You know, they are just as zero sum in this as Turkey are. And they kind of pay no heed to the destructiveness and the polarization being caused by manufacturing and maintaining an artificial divide in the country. And, you know, despite the kind of presence of a ceasefire agreement since October, you know, the new front line created by the Russians last year is still manned by Russian mercenaries. Even more mercenaries and defensive fortifications are there now than when the agreement was signed. The work of this joint military committee of Libyans that was put together by the UN and was supposed to be implementing the ceasefire agreement has kind of drifted to these, you know, these pleasant but ultimately pointless tasks given the situation, like focusing on opening roads. And it seems to all being so subordinated to the whims and the interests of Haftar, the man who started the war, who lost the war, and who has been the main obstacle to peace and progress in Libya since 2014, and yet is again indulgent. If we look to Western Libya, you know, Turkey are certainly ascendant. They own multiple pieces of military real estate, and they're squaring off against the Russians in that capacity. Who also run and operate an airbase and some naval grounds in Sirte. Turkey are performing their own security sector reform program now amongst the Western Libyan forces. And, you know, again, like the Russians, they're entrenching into the oil industry. So the kind of real difference between now and 2015 is just how the divide looks. You know, despite there being only one government now, whereas back then there were three. The divide is actually more pronounced because there are dual legitimate tracks into the oil industry, parallel international relations and parallel forces, each with their own security sector reform going on. And to be frank, we've seen this show before. We know exactly how it ends. The polarization and the antagonism, it ends in another war. We as Europeans, we cede more control to Turkey and Russia, who maintain Libya as this kind of low intensity frozen conflict as part of their broader relationship. And the Europeans have to manage the fallout of this. But instead of focusing on that, even us as Europeans are unfortunately still focusing on what opportunities can be gained from the current government. So just to sum up quickly, this repositioning that was raised in the question, it exists across three strata. The first is this need to stymie the unification process so that Haftar supporting states can maintain a vehicle for their policies. And this will only worsen as time goes on. We've already seen a few days ago that the prime minister of the country was prevented from landing in one of his own cities. And alongside that is the situation on the front lines with the Joint Military Committee, which remains a time bomb. The second strata is this battle for business that's ongoing. As the interim unity government that's only really supposed to be organizing elections is actually making plans to spend over $20 billion on reconstruction and other projects to be performed by the private sectors of involved states. And this is kind of the new prime minister's way of buying support and trying to buy peace, which is, naive at best and could be devastating at worst, given how fragile the Libyan state is and how increasingly impoverished the Libyan people are after 10 years of systematic looting of their country. And it is also a gambit to prevent the third issue from taking place, which is elections. We see different countries like Russia planning electioneering strategies to turn these elections in their favor. We see people like Haftar preparing to coerce his way into the running, and the prime minister trying to avert them. But, after having been promised so much, if these elections that happen are now not seen to be free, to be fair, to be legitimate and protected from outside meddling, then I really fear where it will lead, and it could be the new spark for another war. Thank you for that.
No, thank you for your deep answer about this issue. And I want to introduce the third distinguished guest, that is Vice Admiral Pascal Osseur. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon,
everybody. It's a pleasure to have you here. And let me introduce you a little short presentation. The Vice Admiral Pascal Osseur had an operational career in the surface forces. At the same time, he participated in numerous operational missions, notably in the Mediterranean, and assumed responsibilities in the political military field and international relations within the military staff, international bodies such as UN, EU, NATO, and the Directorate General of Armaments. You was appointed Maritime Prefect, Commander of the Maritime Zone and District of the English Channel at the North Sea. You joined the management in October 2018 of the FMIS Institute. It's a short summary. So I want to ask you if, as previously mentioned, in recent years, the Mediterranean has become the theater of an international geopolitical power struggle, which is seeing strong competition between new and old actors. Could you help us to understand what situation is playing out in the Mediterranean basin and who the main actors are?
Yes, thank you for your question and thank you for your invitation. First of all, we have to admit that we are not living in the world that we were expected. We are living in a period of a global strategic rupture, especially in the Mediterranean. And in my view, there are two main changes. The first one is the end of the socio-economic convergence of the two shores towards European model. The globalized economy was supposed to bring people together. Remember the statements of the 1995 Barcelona summit. It was very interesting to reread it. And this consensus about the globalized economy, which supersedes all the other aspects of international relations, is now has completely collapsed, in my view. And that's the first change. The second one in this region, and that fits with your question about the geopolitical struggle, when you compare with the situation as it was 25 years ago, is the rise of the geopolitical competitors. Due to the US retraction that Alessia mentioned, and most of these competitors are driven by a powerful feeling of revenge, of resentment against the West and the Europeans. And that's a key point, in my view, to understand what's happened in the, I would say, in the South. So what are these powers? I don't want to elaborate too much on China, which is a newcomer, which is still purely economic, even if we know that the geopolitical aspect of it is clearly blatant, but we can maybe speak later on. More classical, Russia. Russia is strongly back. It has a strategy that it is at the same time classical and destabilizing. Its strategy is classic because the Mediterranean has always been Russia's only permanent access to warm seas. So it is the only way for the Russian Navy to deploy warships, to support diplomacy and support military operation by seas. But this presence, I would say, ultimately normal, raise concern because of the general posture of Putin, who faces more and more aggressively the West in general and Europe in particular, through this Eurasian strategy, which aims to maintain Russia in its position of the third great power of the world. That is the reason why this engagement is also a spoiler tool, a posture of opposition to NATO and to EU, that aims to demonstrate that access to the Eastern and Central Med can be denied to the Europeans. All the assets, A2AD, anti-area, area denial assets put in place by the Russians. You can speak about the Caliber cruise missiles, the flanker jets based in Tartus, the Kilo-class submarines, the modern frigates, the mercenaries. All these assets have this objective. So to sum up the problem with Russia, it doesn't lie with, in my view, in its increased military presence in the region, but it lies with its global policy, which aims to weaken and marginalize Europe in its immediate environment. Other change, after the big players with the US, regional powers are playing as well, and that's new. This is new. It was not the case 20 years ago. They are also taking advantage of the opportunity which is represented by the relative military retraction of the US after Obama and Trump. And so these regional powers emancipate from the US and expand their geopolitical room of maneuver. Israel, Egypt, the Gulf states, as Emirates told about it, Iran, Qatar are playing more and more openly in the Med. And we observe a kind, what's called Middle Eastization of the Mediterranean. And that's, in my view, a new thing. But among these regional powers, in my view, the main rising power is in the Med is Turkey. 15 years ago, I would not have said that, but it's now blatant. Turkey wants to use its pivotal position to emancipate from the West and to develop its neo-Ottoman strategy based at the same time on nationalism and political Islam. And this policy have been theorized by Davutoglu roughly 20 years ago. He claims that Turkey belongs to three worlds: the West, Europe and the Balkans, the East, Central Asia and Caucasus, the South, the Near and Middle East. And it was clearly at those times a shift from the Cold War position of Turkey. And Erdogan has implemented this theory. And so he feels that he can take advantage of the window of opportunity offered by the European awakening and relative American disengagement. And this window opportunity helped to materialize the emancipation and the strengthening of Turkey, which could once again, to his view, become a regional major regional power. And in this regard, Erdogan goal fits perfectly well with the Eurasian, anti-Western, anti-European strategy of Putin and Xi Jinping, maybe later on. So the fact is that Turkey is much more present and influent today than 15 years ago in North Syria, in North Cyprus, in Greece EEZ, in East Libya, as Tarek said, in Africa, in Nagorno-Karabakh, and even in the Balkans, for sure, and in Europe. 2020 was, in my view, a particularly aggressive year for Erdogan in that field. And so Turkey is paradoxally, at the same time, a necessary NATO ally to protect from the Russia, and at the same time, a disruptor for in the Central and Eastern Mediterranean, which seeks to increase its influence at the expense of Europeans, at the expense of Russia as well. They are in competition. In Libya, it's a good example. And at the expense of Arab countries, such as Egypt, Syria, Saudi Arabia, or the Emirates, for example. To conclude, in my view, so the two major players in this strategic change in the Med today are Russia and Turkey. They share both the perception that a window of opportunity has opened to resume their historical imperial position. And in this new game, one point we have to notice that the EU is not a real player. Disunity, maybe between France and Italy, we can speak about it, about Libya, reluctance to accept the new strategic situation marked by power relations, difficulty, in fact, to see the world as it is, weakening of the European societies, all this reason can explain it. But the EU, in my view, must show its willingness and its determination if it doesn't want to become a prey, for all the geopolitical carnivores, to quote Sigmar Gabriel, all these geopolitical carnivores, and Tarek mentioned it, which roam the Mediterranean. So thank you for...
Thank you for wrapping up this topic for us. And I want to come back to Dr. Alessia Melkanji for asking you, the Mediterranean is dealing with a plurality of geopolitical, geoeconomic, and security challenges along the two shores of the basin. Focusing on the southern shore, based on your expertise in the region, what are the triggers of instability and geopolitical transformation in this region?
Thank you, Dr. This is a complex question. Okay. As we can see, the Mediterranean became one of the main geopolitical hotspots where new economic, military, and ideological struggles are underway. While the fragile regional security architecture seems governed by a Bayesian state of relations, many drivers of instability and turmoil have arisen during the last decade, pushing the region into a situation of permanent tension. What appears today is the image of a Mediterranean fragmented into a series of interconnected geopolitical as well as domestic crises, which involve international and regional powers and local and national actors through new civil and interstate conflict and rivalries. The elements of this matrix are various. The rise of movements connected to the ideology of global jihad, the growing sectarian polarization between Sunnis and Shiites, also as a result of the struggle for regional political supremacy between Saudi Arabia and the Islamic Republic of Iran, the protests and political changes in 2011, which were identified with the rhetorical and misleading definition of Arab Spring. the outbreak of civil wars in Yemen, Syria, and Libya, which have turned into proxy war among competing external powers, the creation of a jihadist caliphate in 2014, and the perception of a decline, at least in terms of interest, of the United States, but also the rise of migration trend and the already mentioned sovereignist movement, which spread Islamophobia among public opinions and anti-Mediterranean political narratives, generally based on a vision of Muslim societies as a monolithic, static, backward reality. This for sure represents the main current hotspot of instability in the Mediterranean. If we look at the civil wars in Libya and Syria, for example, the Syrian civil war has threatened countries like Iraq and Lebanon, which were already fragile and torn apart internally, further contributing to the crisis of what remained of the Middle East security complex. The fragmentation of Libya that my colleague Tarek Medjerisi have perfectly analyzed is potentially even more dangerous for the stability of the Mediterranean. Particularly worrying is the explosion of intra-Islamic conflict, as we already say, within the different denomination of the Muslim world, and the growing inability to imagine a common public space among different ethno-religious cultural communities, having different identities but rooted in the same territory. A rising number of political actors are exploiting ethnic identities and religious values to advance specific agendas, drastically limiting the room for existence in today's society. The perceived or real withdrawal of American presence in the region, which in the past had ensured an albeit unstable stability, could be considered an important source of turmoil. The increasing decline in U.S. interest and presence in the region has led different international powers to increase their attempt to fill this void, as it has been said by Ossier. In particular, Egypt, the United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, and Turkey, Iran, but also China and Russia have taken bold steps, either directly or through proxies, to advance their agendas and interests in the Mediterranean, encompassing a comprehensive vision of the basin as a security system and not just a simple chessboard for their activities. On the other side, Arab states have failed to elaborate any shared vision at the sub-regional level, and intra-Arab rivalry and hostility broke out into open conflict and proxy war. In conclusion, we cannot forget a plurality of other trends and phenomena that go beyond the traditional geopolitical dynamic analyzed. For example, one of the most evident is the demographic alteration between the two shores of the sea and the role played by the so-called bull generation for the MENA country. Indeed, the combined effect of large numbers of young people, rapid growth in the working age population, and lack of employment opportunities within the job market is producing a potential explosive situation which could worsen the analyzed scenario.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Melkanji. And then I have another question for Dr. Tarek Medjerisi. In light of the recent political developments that lead to the creation of a neo-national unity government, do you consider the current political roadmap for Libya to be credible?
Thank you for this question. Yeah, I mean, the roadmap for the interim period that was designed by the UN and then kind of furnished by this Libyan political dialogue forum that was convened by the United Nations to agree on a way forward was always one that was kind of very light on substance. But I guess that, this is the way that it was designed in order to make it as uncontroversial as possible, in order to ensure that it gets approved and that there is actual progress. But the result of that is that it is now reliant on the initiative of some of the leading political actors who I mentioned before, and who kind of bluntly speaking have little to no interest or incentive in maintaining progress now that they're in power. knowing that it will lead to them losing power and this kind of wonderfully lucrative opportunity before them. So, you know, there needs to be work done to kind of to create a more overt or structured relationship between the different parts of the new system. Because right now we see the new Prime Minister, Debeba, trying to kind of centralize all power in his hands, and this is going to create bad blood, for want of a better term, sooner or later. We see Haftar continuing as he pleases, and you know, still trying to set up this eastern state of his own and trying to accumulate more power and blocking the roadmap's progress as a result. So, you know, the main thrust to kind of give a quick answer to this direct question is that the roadmap itself lays out a good series of steps, but more needs to be done in order to support those actors who do want change and who do want progress. You know, it's good to try to engage the popular communities in Libya, because the people writ large, once they're separated from the kind of elite politicians who are running things at the moment, they kind of all want the same thing, right? They want unity, they want to try to make steps to ending corruption, and they want a more stable and permanent political system, and to get out of this kind of hell of permanent transition that they're stuck in. So as long as they can be helped to fill in the blanks between these big milestones on the roadmap, then it can be made to be significantly more workable than it is today. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for giving us an important insight about these issues. And Pascal, sir, I want to ask you if Biden, and how, in what way, how Biden administration, NATO, UA could deal with these international players in the Mediterranean basin?
Sorry. I would say that, in my view, Biden has a clear strategy, which is not the case of the EU. Biden's priority in the Mediterranean are first contain the economic and technological involvement of China, which is not the subject here, but clearly China is on the top of his agenda. Contain Russia, protect Israel, as always, I would say. Engage Iran, stabilize Middle East and all the area, MENA area, Middle East, North Africa, and promote multilateralism with a vigilance on democracy. Clearly, it's part of his agenda as well. So my feeling is that the Biden team and Biden himself learned the lessons of the Obama period. And he understands very well the new geopolitical game between carnivore, once again, to quote Gabriel. He wants to give a strong signal that the US will be on the lead in NATO in face of Russia. That's clearly its top priority in my view. And the message were clearly passed to Erdogan to give sign of allegiance. And for example, the US recognition of the Armenian genocide, in my view, is an example of a signal he wants to give to Erdogan inside NATO. In my view, Erdogan received these messages loud and clear. And the publicity given by Ankara to the agreement with Ukraine, for example, is an illustration that Turkey wants to show that he has chosen his side. On their side, looking at the Europeans, they are divided, I would say, as often, between those who want to develop the economy with Russia and Turkey. Germany is Turkey's largest trading partner. Gulf Stream 2 is clearly an issue for Germany, which pushed for trading with Russia. Speaking about energy, Italy benefits from the Trans-Adriatic Pipeline project, and clearly it's an issue. Maintaining the trade with Turkey is a big issue in Italy. There are countries who wants to deter Russia first, all the eastern and northern countries in Europe, and so they don't mind. They don't have. I would say, if I can say, they don't care about what's happened in the south. It's not their business. And those who want to deter Russia, to deter Turkey. That's Greece, Cyprus, Spain, France, all the countries which participated to this exercise last week in Greece, in Iolkos. So clearly, Europeans are divided. And because of this European cacophony, NATO and EU strategy will be determined, in my view, in Washington. Because you have one leader who knows what he wants, and the others who are unable to settle a single position. And in my guess, the US will be forced to tolerate some accommodation and to deviations from Erdogan to keep him away from Putin, because it is their priority. And it could be, I don't know, Turkish policy towards the Kurds. There will be tolerance, probably, with that, because it's very important for Turkey, and we can understand it. Or the support of the spread of Turkish influence in North Africa through political Islam, in the Balkans, for example, or in Europe. Clearly, there will be an accommodation, in my view, from Biden, because he needs too much to have Turkey on his side against Russia. And for the EU, it's not maybe always the good news.
If you agree, I would like to do another third and last round of questions. I ask you maybe to give me a short answer, as you have already done. So thank you. Dr. Alessia Mercangi, I want to ask you, focusing on the European role, in your opinion, what action could Europe take to effectively reduce tension and instability within the Mediterranean basin? You have to switch the microphone.
Thank you very much.
It happens a lot of time during the webinar. No worries.
Thank you. In the 90s, as I already mentioned, the end of the bipolar confrontation paved the way for the European Union to play a more active role on the EU-MENA economic landscape. And indeed, for more than 2 decades, the EU tried to enhance its deep social, political, and economic ties with the countries of the Southern and Eastern Mediterranean, with the Euro-Mediterranean Partnership and the European Neighborhood Policy, with the aim to promote the spread of democracy, human rights, good governance in MENA area. The aspiration was to establish, relying mostly on economic support and soft power, closer relations, and to promote political, economic, and cultural liberalization. But all these expensive initiatives got partial results. De facto aspiration to promote political pluralism and human rights clashed with bilateral interests, inter-European rivalries, and economic motivations. The EU and the single European member states withdraw from an active policy toward the south, paralyzed by the terror of the terror and by the refusal to set up a comprehensive common strategy to deal with illegal migration flows and with the security crisis of the basin. But the basin, as we know, performs the function of political and anthropological mediation between different lands and cultures, and it plays an important balancing role in the global space, interconnecting different geostrategic regions, especially now that European, North African, Levantine countries are facing a significant transformation in the region. This role of pivotal hub reveals a need that becomes increasingly urgent to protect and guarantee the security of the area, developing a strategy not based on the zero-sum game theory among the competing interests of the actors involved. It is vital, in my opinion, to adapt a new vision, to envisage a policy which engages them, offering a common perspective based on shared value, and counter the negative self-fueling spirals of polarizing sectarian identities, become crucial to relaunch political, social, and cultural initiatives based on an idea of security which should go beyond the traditional perception of state or national security, to encompass that of collective security and moreover that of human security. Security means addressing the basic needs of the population of a state, not just guaranteeing its border. So to answer to your question about what Europe can effectively do to reduce instability within the Mediterranean basin, in my opinion, there is a need for determined multilateral political and international diplomatic action able to rebuild the regional security architecture and mechanism for the escalation of crisis based on armed controls agreement and to strengthen confidence building measures. This scenario would create an opportunity to update EU existing partnership frameworks within the Mediterranean basin, enhancing and further developing political dialogue and practical cooperation within the EU's partner in the Mediterranean. EU is once again fundamental for relaunching international diplomatic process and confidence building measure dialogue initiative, contributing to shifting strategies from a zero-sum logic to cooperative approaches toward better security for and stabilization of the Mediterranean region.
Thank you, Dr. Melkanji. And have a last question for Tarek Megerisi. I want to ask you if, in your opinion, what will be the further steps that could be adopted by the international community in order to strengthen Libyan political stability?
Thank you. And I'll kind of use the international community here as an extension for the EU and perhaps with support from the United States. And, you know, building on what my other two co-panelists said, the most important step really is some unity, some cohesion, some strategic purpose. Because right now we see that the confusion of European actors leaves Europeans kind of weak and divided and always kind of secondary or tertiary actors in larger alliances, right? Now we have in Western Libya, the Italians chasing the Turks, and in Eastern Libya, we have France chasing the United Arab Emirates. Whereas if the EU could act more concertedly, then we could, you know, see a very different dynamic at play. But, you know, more broadly speaking, the way forward is to kind of protect the process, protect the roadmap that we discussed in the previous question, from all the, you know, the different predators or the carnivores, as they were referred to before, who are trying to scupper it. You know, it's not in European nature to compete militarily with Turkey and with Russia now in Libya. That would never fly. So instead, we have to work smarter, and we have to use our own tools in a better way. And this means driving progress by kind of leveraging that popular will I discussed before to move towards a more permanent political system, and to get to something more stabilizing. And this kind of goes in three ways again. You know, the first of these is to prioritize protecting the unity of the country. Because so long as Libya is divided, then Libyan politicians will always have an excuse to kind of stagnate and to stop progress. The threat of war will always hang in the air, and kind of real progress will always remain elusive. If we prize unity here, it means leaning very heavily on all of those who want to maintain parallel institutions or parallel sets of relations or contract making away from the central authorities. And we kind of already have a legal architecture of Security Council resolutions, of EU Council decisions, and so on, to be able to use sanctions towards this end. And the other side of the coin would be leveraging our bilateral relations with some of the main intervening players in the country, people like Egypt, the UAE, and Turkey, and so on, to be more constructive in this approach. And we've already seen that, you know, these can be put to good use in the previous UN process. And this kind of feeds into the second key issue, which is unifying Libya's security services. I mean, first and foremost, we have to ensure that the incoming UN ceasefire monitors are not going to simply turn out as like a UN seal on the partition of the country, keeping it that way forevermore. but that they instead drive the joint military committee towards some kind of process. And for some reason, I never quite understood. Many people are quite sensitive about this next point, but frankly speaking, something has to be done about Haftar. I mean, we cannot keep indulging him, hoping to negotiate with him, to please him, to placate him. I mean, from what we've seen over the last 5 years, for so long as Haftar and his project exists, then frankly, Libya will never be in peace, because all he wants to do is to dominate by force. You know, his backers will always support him and drive him to do it. And there are just plenty of weapons around for people to resist him from doing so. You know, it's not an ideological or a political position, it's a logical one. If you want Libya to be stabilized, you simply have to do something about the guy who keeps destabilizing it. So instead of trying to find an accommodation with this guy, we should be bringing together the powers above him. We should bring together Egypt along with Turkey to agree on kind of a framework for how they can drive security sector reforms together instead of opposed to one another. And this kind of brings me to the last point, which is elections. You know, if we protect the integrity of the roadmap, which is a roadmap towards elections, then this is a bit awkward for Europeans who don't like to be involved in the internal politics of other countries. But essentially, it means driving from behind as much as it does blocking outside interference. You know, the UN, in its infinite wisdom, it created this political dialogue forum as like an oversight body. And I think that they should be employed again to create clearer relations and duties between all the different parties to stop the power grabs and the acrimony. The parliament must be coerced into passing the required legislative steps. And, you know, most crucially of all, you know, clear steps towards the election should be announced and communicated for the public to engage with. And the process must be secured the entire way. I mean, for example, we're talking about elections now in December in Libya. What is it, like 6-7 months away? And it's currently impossible or completely unreasonable to think that, you know, a citizen can run for office or to campaign freely against either the kind of oppressive apparatus in the east or the militias in the west or the lawlessness in the south. So the situation must be secured, and we need to help to make sure that the electoral process from start to end is one that is seen as a legitimate one, that is broadly engaged with by the Libyan people, that is kind of free and fair. And, you know, protecting all of this is the most important thing for Libya this year, because the international community has committed to this and Libyans have raised their expectations. Many political and military groups are waiting for it. So if it doesn't happen, or if it's not done right, then it will be, frankly, probably the defining disaster of the next few years. Thank you.
Thank you to you, because you have given us a lot to consider and to think on. So I have then my last question to Admiral Pascal Osseur. As we are seeing, China is fortifying its role in the Mediterranean, for example, through the Belt and Road Initiative. Do you think that this geopolitical stance could represent an obstacle for the current and future operation in the Mediterranean basin?
Yes, I think that China raised real questions in terms of a global influence, definition of norms, of standards, that may conflict with our value and our interests. But in terms of security, I don't think that China is a troublemaker. On the contrary, as I said earlier, China game in MENA, in Middle East and North Africa, is mainly focused on economy and technology. Its main objective is to recover raw material from Africa, hydrocarbons from the Gulf and Algeria and Libya soon, probably, and technology and markets in Europe. And that's it. So having said that, politically, China is looking for stability, which fits, in fact, with European views. When you look at the military side of China involvement, its forces in Djibouti mainly, they have two main missions. First, protection of their nationals, Chinese nationals, often used as manpowers in his infrastructure projects. Remember, in 2011, China organized the evacuation of 60,000 of its citizens. So clearly they know what is at stake and they are ready to do it. The second mission is to secure the maritime traffic in Indian Ocean, especially the help from the Gulf, which represent roughly 40% of their supply. So to sum up, China's military and China global posture in the Mediterranean basin and in Middle East as well is globally non-confrontational. And it could even help the EU to reduce the tensions. So we can maybe use it as the EU. The only points of concern could be, however, in case of rising tensions between the US and China, it could push China to enforce its anti-Western posture, creating a kind of Eurasian front, which can involve China, Russia, but even Turkey, Iran, Pakistan, and that will be a very bad scenario for us, and that will be destabilizing in terms of security. But so we have to try to prevent this kind of rising tension between the US and China, and that is a clear issue for us Europeans. But today we can maybe work with China to help to stabilize things because it is their interest.
Thank you very much, Admiral Ossor. Thank you very much for your final remarks.
Alessia, sorry, Alessia, sorry to jump in an appropriate way, but let me. There is a question coming from the audience on the social media that I think it's interesting because you cover with your question almost all the question possible, but there is something different from the social media that I'd like to share. In particular, I think, but this could be a question for everybody. We have some minutes that you can delay, but in particular, it's for Tarek Medjlisi, if it's possible. Do you think it would be feasible or useful to create a federal state in Libya?
The short answer is yes, but this is a very highly charged term, right? The term federalism is used a lot by Libyans as a kind of watchword for separatism, like they want to separate the East from the rest of the country. And that is a disaster because it doesn't actually solve any of the problems. In fact, it makes them worse. Gaddafi, he didn't leave Libya with much, but he left it with a very interconnected country. So the water resources, the oil resources, the electricity, they're split up. So if we separate the East from the rest, we don't end up with peace. We just end up with war between two countries instead of a civil war. Saying that, a more decentralized system where local governments have the power to kind of use their own share of the country's oil wealth for how they want, I think is, judging from all of the outreach to Libyans over the last 10 years, is the way forward for the country. After 42 years of Gaddafi and then 10 years of chaos, Libyans are quite scared of a highly centralized system now. The key is, how do we do this in a kind of free and fair way that protects the integrity and freedom of Libyans to make their own choices, not that decentralizes corruption instead. I hope that answered it. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't think that there are more further questions from the people that are connected with us. And so let me please just add a thing. You and all the distinguished speakers of today's events have demonstrated with an abundance of facts and testimonies and outstanding clarity the need for and the importance of a broader and more comprehensive view on the Mediterranean geopolitical scenario. The future ahead of us is dense with uncertainties, and these topics will be studied and addressed for years to come. But let me express my gratitude to and my satisfaction with the contributors of today's session, which mark another defining step towards the October conference Shade Med. The road which will carry us there will be built and paved on land, and it will be cruised and navigated on the seaways that we all share, as the two admirals can tell us. It is our duty to keep them safe and viable, and to implement stability and peace all around and across the area. So thanks also to the Unifying Irini communication staff. You are doing a great job, and we have to thank you for this webinar. And I'd like to take this time to thank all our speakers for participating in this afternoon meeting, and they let this webinar possible. So let me to make greetings to you, and with all our compliments. Thanks most of all to the Rear Admiral Fabio Agostini, that is the ideator of this webinar, Dr. Alessia Melcangi, thank you very much, Dr. Tarek Megerisi, and Admiral Sir.
And thank you, Alessia. Thank to you, Alessia Ardesi, for this very clever and deep moderation of this event. Thanks to all, and see you next time.
See you. It was an honor and privilege.
Possibly in presence. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everybody.
We hope so. We hope to have the new webinar in presence. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.